glad to have everybody.
Cook, Chair of the Mississippi Charter School Authorizer Board. This regularly scheduled meeting of the NCSAB is being held today, Monday, July 11th, 2022 at 1 p.m. via teleconference means pursuant to Mississippi Code annotated section 2541(5). Notice of this meeting was posted in accordance with state law and included the date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting and identified the location of the meeting available to the public. The public may attend the NCSAB boardroom located at 239 North Lamar Street, Suite 207, Jackson, Mississippi, 39201. Okay, now we'll move on to the roll call and announcement of the quorum. As I call the names of the authorized board members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. I'm Jean Cook. I'm present in the boardroom at the office in Jackson, Mississippi. Leader Ed.
Leader via phone in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Thank you. Bill Billingsley.
Present boardroom in Jackson.
Don Hinton.
Present by telephone.
Kimberly Remack.
I'm present by phone and I'm in Olive Branch.
Jennifer Whittier.
Present in the boardroom.
Candace Robbins.
Present in the boardroom in Jackson City.
Okay. A quorum of the authorized board is present for the purpose of this meeting and calling the meeting to order at 1 p.m. Okay, now move on to the pledge and the invocation.
Everybody stand, please, and I'll lead us in the invocation followed by the pledge. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together again today to help do the business of the Charter School Authorizing Board. Please guide us in that our decisions will be made in your honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Salute.
Yeah.
Pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we're moving on to the adoption of the agenda. Board members, you've received a copy of the agenda. This time I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. And please identify yourself for the record.
Bill Dillon.
Kimberly Remack.
Okay, we got it.
Bill Dillon, consent.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to our action item. First action item is approval of the minutes of the June 13th, 2022 regularly scheduled meeting of the NCSAB and the June 28th, 2022 Performance and Accountability Committee meeting. With board members, you received a copy of the June 13th, 2022 meeting minutes and the June 28th Performance and Accountability Committee meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion to accept both.
So
Second, Jennifer Whittier.
Bill Dillon.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those.
Leader, I would like to make one correction in the June 28th minutes. It says Bill Billingsley participated. I would have to see.
Okay. All right, we'll fix it. We'll let that. Let's see. Yeah, 28, or is it? Minutes. So we can. Okay, so, that's correct. I'll entertain a motion to approve pending the change that Mr. Dredd just identified. Can I get a motion
So moved. Jennifer Whittier.
and a second?
And Stokes, a second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. I know, right? I'll pause there. Okay, moving on to chair report. I don't have a report this month, so I will hand it over to Dr. Kay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to our members from the public. It's good to see everybody. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate your interest in the work that we do. Just want to say a special thank you to the committees. You guys have been working really hard on this work that is so important to the boys and girls in the communities in the state. And so I appreciate your hard work and your dedication. The Performance and Accountability Committee did meet earlier in the month, and then the application committee met earlier today. So again, thank you. We couldn't do it without the committees, and we certainly appreciate your help. The only other thing that I have on my report this month is I'll be leaving in the morning early at 5 a.m. I'll be headed to the airport, or at the airport. I better be there at 5. My plane leaves at 6. So I'm headed to Chicago for our second in-person meeting with the NACSA Leaders Program. So this has been a really exciting opportunity to work with about 9 other authorizers and folks in this work from across the nation. And so I've been just really motivated and excited to be a part of such an extraordinary group of folks. It's just been really amazing. Tomorrow, I will have, after I get there, tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I will have the opportunity to present along with 2 of my colleagues our framework. And so I'm really excited to be able to present that. And we're talking about multiple measures in this work and looking at different ways that schools can demonstrate their success beyond that of just test scores. And so looking at multiple measures and having our accountability model, our performance framework right up there in front of everybody to be talking about that just brings me a lot of pride and should bring the board a lot of pride to know that we can stand up against anybody in the nation and what we're doing. Some of the first to step out to look at multiple measures. It's a real movement right now, and so having some of those multiple measures in our framework puts us above some of the others. So I'm proud of that work and proud of the work that you guys have done to support that. So looking forward to being there with my colleagues and then getting back and right back to work. So that's it for my report this month.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the financial report. Denise Duracet with Cornerstone Consulting will present the financial report.
Well, it's a very brief report today, since we just met a month ago, and not a lot has occurred. That in the last month, operating expenses used to be about $19,500, and the majority of that was in salaries. The remainder of FY22 will be paid out this month. There's still some outstanding invoices. Some majority is already sent to me, and some that we're still paying. But by the time we meet again, we will have complete financials for FY22 finished. And then the only thing that we made out of CSP this time was one more bill from professional polish for technical assistance and 1 claim payment. But the main thing I really want to talk to you about today is about travel for board reimbursement. This is something that most of y'all have never asked for. I think the whole time I've been here, we've had 1 or 2 board members who said, hey, I traveled a good piece, maybe I should ask for mileage. But none of you, much as I know, maybe one of you when you went out of town or something that wasn't coming to the board office, maybe just a little bit everybody on. So I'm going to tell them to speak up a little bit more. So what I wanted to tell you is that because of the cost of gasoline, that a lot of you may be interested in starting to ask for mileage reimbursement when you come to the board office, in addition to any other travel you do on behalf of the board. And so you don't have to start it today. We can actually, since FY22 is still open, we can actually accept travel from you on a travel voucher, showing all of the travel meetings that you attended and any other travel you took during the whole fiscal year. So that would be from last July until today. And so if y'all are interested, I know Jordan has put some information together, getting demographic information from each of you so that we can set you up in the system. So she'll need like social security numbers and addresses and things like that. And I don't know if she's already started collecting it, but she said if you're wanting that to reimburse, that she'll get that from you. And then, what we will do is, you have to fill out an official travel voucher. And of course, nothing is ever easy. So Jordan and I will work with you on that. But this is what the travel voucher looks like. And on the back page, it has each days you travel. We will not make you fill out one of these for each and every day you came. We'll take one for the entire year, if that's what you want. But, so we need from July to June on one voucher. And then today's meeting on a separate voucher because today's in the mid-fiscal year. Now, again, things are not easy. The mileage rate changed several times and the legislature changed things. So if you travel less than 100 miles, there's no distinction on how you have to report your travel. You just get paid strictly by the mileage rate. But if you travel more than 100 miles to come round trip here, then you have to pretend from July to April that you rented a car. Because the state said you had to get whatever's cheaper, mileage or renting a car. So there's an actual form that we would help you fill out on how to pretend you rented a car. And then what happens is you get paid based on whichever's cheaper, your mileage rate or the car rental rate. And so the things we would need for the car rental rate would be how far you have to drive to get to a rental car location. So if you're in Podunk, Mississippi, and you have to drive to a big city and it's 25 miles away, round trip to get you to a car rental place is 50 miles. And so that adds to how much you really get reimbursed. And then we also have to know, could you have that car for one day? Like if the meeting was at 1 in the afternoon and you don't get home until after the car rental place closes, then you really have to have that car for 2 days because you can't turn it in. And so we mark all of that, and that tells us how much you can get reimbursed. And so that would be in effect from July to April. But then in April, the legislature said, guess what? This is kind of crazy to pretend you rent a car, so we're just going to start paying you straight mileage, no matter how many miles you drive. And so from April to June, you pay 58.5 cents a mile. But starting today, you're getting paid 62.5 cents a mile. So y'all just put down your meeting dates that you actually came here. Jordan and I will make it all work for you and then reimburse you the right amount. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, and Denise, if you don't mind, if you'll just reference that statute where, when it changed, when the legislature changed it from this amount to that amount, just reference that so that we'll have that for our documentation.
I wrote down that the mileage rate during the year was 58.5, but I don't think that rate actually went into effect until January. I think it's 56 the first half of the year. So anyway, if you'll just tell us what days, we'll make sure and we'll put it together and let you know how you get money for sure.
I think you're discovering why not us and them.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And let me say, I'm sorry though, I didn't even say anything and I had forgotten completely about it until one board member brought that to my attention. And so I said, I will just do a public mea culpa and say apologies for not even mentioning it before, but anyway, we will make that up to you and make sure that you have your mileage taken care of, should you like to jump through all the hoops and get paid back.
Some of us remember when we got in trouble for paying somebody for traveling.
Oh, indeed, but that was a decision a while back. And it wasn't in state, it wasn't an employee or a board member, that's right.
That's right. Okay, and then I just, one other thing, if we're going to do it back from July to June, we don't have a whole lot of time because the year ends. So if we can get it all in and pay before the end of this month, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise.
All right, moving on to the committee reports. First up is the applications committee.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. The application committee meeting was held today to discuss the time from the state to the threshold quality review of the application cycle. Schoolwork, presented the evaluator's findings and recommendations for each participant. And at the appropriate time during today's meeting, I'll present the recommendations for consideration and approval by the board.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Performance and Accountability Committee report. Yes.
Our performance and accountability meeting was held on June 28th to consider findings and recommendations from the performance framework trial run. Dr. K presented a summary of the project, trends and feedback from the schools, and proposed recommendations for modifications to the framework. At the appropriate time during today's meeting, Dr. K will present those recommendations for consideration and approval by the board to begin the APA process and revise the policy.
All right, thank you. Don't see any requests for public comment, so we'll move on to new business. And action item A is to consider approval of the call for quality school stage 2 threshold quality review findings. And each application will be presented individually by Kimberly Greenmack. And first up is Columbus Leadership Academy.
Okay, so the application committee voted to recommend Columbus Leadership Academy proceed to stage 3 of the cycle.
Okay. Are there any questions about? Yeah, how do you want to do it? Do you want to?
Yeah.
No.
Kimberly, we're gonna change spots so, Ms. Robbins can hear a little bit better. So Bailey's swapping seats with her right now. So give us just a second.
So,
You might want to reference the salary findings that were handed in as well. So that people can recall and pull up those documents and that.
okay, are they in?
They were in the board packet.
Okay, so,
There's a summary finding sheet and then they're individual. Yeah, right.
okay, all right, so, there's a summary of all the applications and the recommendations to proceed or not proceed to the next stage in your board packet. If you want to pull that up to have as reference in front of you. It's not working, but I did it this morning. Oh, thank you. Okay, look at that, all right. So, Mr. Billings, do you want to hear them all at once before we
No,
discuss
no,
them?
no,
One
I
at a
was
time?
asking, I was asking how are we doing?
Okay, all right, well, the way they're in my notes is kind of one at a time for motions and discussion and votes, so.
Well, I think that's the
Yeah.
best way.
Okay, so the first up is Columbus Leadership Academy, and do you have any questions about that? And Kim, did you give recommendation from Kimberly, did you say it again? Yeah. Okay,
I'm going to send that we accept the application committee vote to recommend making a motion.
okay, so this time I'll entertain a motion to approve stage 3 threshold quality review findings and move Columbus Leadership Academy through to stage 3 of the cycle. Can I get a motion for that?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
The next application committee voted to recommend instant impact global scrap for students stage 3. I'll make a motion that we accept, this.
okay. So, I just want to remind all the board members to identify yourself when you're making, a motion and second or a vote. Oh, okay, so do we need to go back to Columbus and do that, so we have everybody here? Okay.
No, those are the people on.
Yes,
Oh, the people on the
so
phone.
just when you make a motion, I move, I Bill Wilson motion, and then Jennifer Woodard, second.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just so you know.
okay, so let's get the Columbus Leadership, motion, the first motion, would be at person identified, maybe.
I so move King's Robin.
Okay? And a
Bill
second.
Billingsley, second.
And then any discussion? All those in
Okay,
favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
Jean,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Did you get back to Columbus Leadership Academy?
Yes, you're gonna redo to get the names of the people who made the motion on the record. And the votes.
For the original motion, because I wrote, originally, and it's Kimberly Remack from Hollywood.
Okay. You're breaking up a little bit. Let me,
I think
Bailey wants to say something.
she made the motion at the end of her, at the end of her
Let's,
suggestion. She's not allowed to make the motion as the chair of the meeting.
I initially, genius.
She didn't, I think she didn't intend to make the motion.
Okay, Bailey, how are we supposed to do it? Let's,
for the sake of
yeah,
clarity,
Yeah.
let someone else make the motion.
Okay.
It's not on that.
okay, did you hear that, Kimberly?
What was it?
Okay, for the sake of clarity, you can, give the recommendation, but I'll ask for the motion and someone else on the board will, for clarity, will make the motions for accepting, just to be safe.
And then you're on the roll call.
For those on the back.
Yes, and we'll get a roll call for those on the phones and so for the votes. For the votes. Okay, so do I just need to call them by name and say, you're right, how you vote? Okay, so for those of you on the phone, I'll call your name for your votes so I can hear yea or nay. Is that right, Billy?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that we see it out.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, you're welcome. All right, so I think we've had our motion and our second, and I think we just had our discussion about it, right? Okay, so now I'm going to take a vote. This is for Columbus. At Leadership Academy, need to move to stage 3. And all those in favor? Okay. And for those on the phone, let me just go in order and tell me your vote. So, Lee, how do you vote?
Aye, please.
Okay, Don? Okay, I'm a guy, and Kimberly?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are 3 ayes for the folks on the phone. Thank you. The motion carries. All right, now we're on to the next one, Kimberly. It's instant.
The applicant,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
city voted to recommend instant access, to stage 3 of the cycle.
Okay. Are there any questions about that before we move on to me asking for a motion? Okay. Hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve stage 2 threshold quality review findings and move instant impact global prep through to stage 3 of the cycle.
Bill Billingsley, so moved.
Second, King's Robin.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, those in the room, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and on the phone, Lee, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, Don? And Kimberly Remack?
Aye.
Okay, and are there any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, now we're up to the third application.
The application committee voted to recommend Resilience Academy of Teaching Excellence in East Tallahatchie proceed to stage 3.
Are there any questions about that? Okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve stage 2 threshold quality review findings and move Resilience Academy of Teaching Excellence East Tallahatchie through to stage 3 of the cycle.
Bill Billingsley, so moved.
Take a second.
Second, King's Robin.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and on the phone, Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton. Kimberly Remack.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I didn't hear any opposed, so that motion carries. All right, we're on to the fourth.
The applications committee recommends Resilience Academy of Teaching Excellence, North Football, proceed to stage 3 cycle.
Are there any questions about that? No? Okay, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the stage 2 threshold quality review findings and move Resilience Academy of Teaching Excellence, North Bolivar, through to stage 3 of the cycle. Can I get a motion for that?
Bill Billingsley, so moved.
Second.
Second, Candace Robbins.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton, Kimberly Remak.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. All right, next up.
Next up, and I hope you guys are all looking at your schoolwork, and on me too. On a 2-to-1, the applications committee voted to recommend Clarksville Collegiate Prep to proceed to stage 3 of the cycle. This was, the information is in your packet. Schoolwork, recommended that they do not proceed on, they did not meet 3 out of 6 of the threshold criteria.
Are there any questions about this one?
So it's, okay, Jennifer, Lee, I have a question. I'm looking at the ones that were not met, student populations, personnel, and performance history. Is this just basic paperwork that was not completed?
Dr. Kay, can you help me answer that? I believe it was.
Actually, the 3 findings on that particular applicant were all, or the 3 inadequate areas were all different areas. And I don't know if I have I do, hold on just a second, Kimberly, I can tell you and Jennifer exactly, where those areas were. Over here. All right, so with respect to threshold area 2 student populations, this is in the threshold quality review. The evaluator found, according to the criteria, that the application was inadequate, that the funds that were allocated to serve special populations were inadequate or contradicted by the assumptions in other parts of the plan. So in the proposal narrative, the applicant stated the school would contract non-instructional special education services through a qualified and licensed vendor, ensuring students have access to all services outlined in their IEPs, to include but not be limited to occupational therapy, speech and language, and counseling. However, in the 5-year budget of the financial plan, the line item for special education services in the contracted services area did not contain any funding. And so that was an area of inadequacy based on the evaluator's review. And threshold quality indicator number 4 for personnel, in the proposal narrative, the applicant stated they would maintain a single board for both schools, and that as founding board members in their terms, they would be replaced with new board members from a, quote, search within our networks that includes, quote, the anticipated expansion of our schools. However, the applicant did not describe a plan for ongoing development or for transitioning the board to its new duties related to expansion. One thing to note on this particular application is the school is going from an elementary model and proposing a high school model, which required a full application based on the statute, the way that it's written. The final area that was not met was in the performance history, and the standard or criteria in this case is the evidence demonstrating the operator's track record of academic performance is not provided or fails to meet the statutory requirement. The statute is clear, and I'll reference that in just a minute. However, the evaluator's comments indicate the applicant provided academic performance data for the Mississippi Academic Assessment Program, the MAP, our state assessment, and the Northwest Evaluation Association measures of academic progress we refer to as NWEA or MAP, the short MAP, assessments in its portfolio summary. That is the benchmark data that's collected individually by the school. However, there is only 1 year of 21 available MAP data, meaning the state assessment data, because schools didn't test in because of COVID. Then there is, that does not provide the opportunity to assess gains. Clearly, no fault of the schools, I would add, because of COVID, we didn't test, and so that's certainly no fault of the schools, any of the schools that will be going through the renewal cycle, or in this case, the application cycle. Furthermore, the percentage of students making at least 1 year of gain on the NWEA MAP assessment was 72% in reading and 81% at the end of the year in 2019. So this is their benchmark data. The students made good progress over the course of the year, ended the year at 72%, making at least 1 year of gain, and 81% in math. And then in 2021, there was a decline of 45 points in reading and 54 points in mathematics. So skipping over 1920 to 2021, there was a decline in the benchmark data. And then where the statute references this, and it actually references it in two different places, in 372819 and in 372815, it says the authorizer has a duty and obligation, and I'm paraphrasing there, but quote, in deciding whether to approve charter applications, the authorizer must grant charters only to those applicants that have provided evidence of competence in each element of the authorizer published approval criteria. And in the case of an applicant that currently operates one or more schools in any nation or state, clear evidence that the management or leadership team of the charter school or schools currently operated has produced statistically significant gains in student achievement. Clear evidence was not provided as the applicant did not demonstrate gains in student achievement and instead saw the decrease in students making gains of 1 year on the NWEA or MAP, short MAP. Additionally, the applicant chose not to respond to the prompts from the RFP pertaining to the applicant's performance track record. While a section with the heading Performance Track Record was listed in the proposal narrative on page 22, this section simply referenced the portfolio summary and did not address the RFP's questions for that section. For example, the applicant did not include a discussion of the existing school's performance or provide context for the data presented within the portfolio summary. I would also note, to answer your question, Jennifer, earlier, that Sarah pointed out during today's application meeting that all applicants had an opportunity, because we increased the narrative from 50 pages to 75 pages, to demonstrate their desire and their relevant data and share their mission, their vision, their goals, and so forth in 75-page narrative. And in particular, this applicant and the others that were not recommended to move forward did not take advantage of the full 75 pages. And I think that's on your summary sheet there. So that answers your question, I hope.
It does. It also concerns me. This school had the same time frame that all the others had.
Yes,
to get their criteria.
Yes, ma'am.
Their criteria to review.
The law requires that we allow applicants a minimum of 180 days, and it's very clear in the statute that this was released in March, and if you take it all the way to September, we extend beyond that 180 days for the board to make its decision on whether or not to approve a school that goes through the application cycle or to deny.
And the language chose not to complete the questionnaire or
The application is significant. It is a healthy application, and there are multiple questions and multiple prompts, multiple attachments that a full application can run over 100+ pages. What you're seeing is just a summary of what the initial review was at stage 2. And so The application at stage 3 is a deeper dive into the threshold quality review. So in this case, the narrative gives the applicant an opportunity to really describe what it is they'd like to do with their school model, with their mission, with their vision, with their student population, their recruitment, their enrollment, their financials, all of those areas. And so they have at least 75 pages that they can complete and articulate that clearly to the application reviewers.
And that was not completed.
It was not completed in the sense that it was only about 40 some odd pages.
I see.
But yes, they have the same opportunity to do the same as others.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So when you say not completed, you
This
don't.
is Leader.
Oh, so go ahead, you.
Yeah, I just want to ask, I guess, a question. Now, Clarksdale Collegiate, they are operating another charter, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the comparison, comparison school years for 2018-19 and then 2021, is that based off the school they're currently operating?
Yes, the data that you're looking at from 19 to 21, that is benchmark data. That's kind of one of those the languages that we use in education all the time. But it's really a way to inform instruction. And so we test kids and it gives us data and information on where the kiddos are. And then that that informs the instruction for the next step. We typically benchmark 3 times a year, and that would be end of the year data from 2019 and 2021 in this case.
Has there been any consideration taken into or account for COVID or hybrid learning and how that affected test scores? It seems to me that, if you look at it on paper, it looks somewhat, a significant drop. But if you kind of step back and look at it, from what we were going through, I wonder, has the board previously made a decision about COVID protocol and how they play and how they should be applied to the determination of that score?
The only time we had the authority to waive any indicators or any of the requirements was under executive order by the governor. And that this time we don't have the authority, and Bailey, our legal counsel, can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have any authority to go above what the statute requires and do anything differently. Now, the board can certainly make a decision to take into consideration COVID and make a decision based on the facts presented before them. But the way that the law reads, it does not take into account any of the COVID conditions in this case. The other thing I would say in this particular situation, this school is an elementary school proposing a high school, and so it would be 2 different, very, very different models in this case for operating the school. And so the entire, application would have to give pretty compelling evidence and pretty compelling high levels of confidence to the evaluators that they would feel confident that this school would be able to bring to fruition their vision to operate a high school.
And so at this point, all we're doing is taking a vote to move them to phase 3. And I believe you call it a deeper dive, correct?
Yes, sir. This is a deeper dive. This is the next phase that takes the evaluators through a very rigorous next phase. The criteria goes beyond that of the criteria at stage 2.
Well, I guess my question is it possible that some of the questions or the concerns that I raised could be answered or fleshed out in greater detail if we did a deeper dive?
I suppose they certainly could. They can't go back and revise their application, but if they were to make it all the way to the capacity hearing, then perhaps the evaluators probing on those questions, they would be able to flesh out some of those answers from the applicant to be convinced at that time that the applicant was deserving of a recommendation by the external evaluator.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I wanna just, I guess our, person is there, but I want to, look at, make sure that everybody is full station, that I'm now is recommendation.
Yeah.
Kimberly, I'm sorry, but you are breaking up some there, so can you repeat yourself, please?
I said, I just want to make sure that everybody is looking at the school information work that, that reads, stage 2 threshold quality review form. It's on the side, summary block.
So wait,
I'm
so,
sorry, somebody tell me what I was just.
I think that's right.
yeah, see the full application summary, is that right? Yeah. Because in the applications committee, School Works walked everybody through. Okay. Mr. Billingsley, working on getting the document pulled up.
Technical assistance.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
The old.
yeah, piece of paper there, yeah.
And Kimberly, I just want to say this, I don't think that, I have access to this, I'm reading it and I'm looking at it, but I think the concern is, not allowing making a decision like this and not allowing a, applicant to go to the next stage and having to restart all over again next year. And I just think it would be good in the best interest of us all to kind of at least have a lot more context before you make a decision of this magnitude that can affect, like you said, I think in the earlier view that we have to think about the students and we think about the families that are being served in these communities. And before I tell the charter school no, or push the applicant to the side, I want to be able to know confidently, like, hey, this is not a good fit and it's not a quality school. Because I think we're all at the table, we agree that we are wanting to provide quality education for all students.
We're at the discussion before the discussion. Okay, guys, there's no discussion, there's really questions. Do we need to, so that's the question actually, Mr. Billingsley. Do we need to have a motion to have this discussion, but we're still just in the
question.
script, if there's any questions. So we're good. Okay.
Can you all hear me? Kimberly?
Yeah,
Yes.
but you're coming in and out certain times, so just so you know that.
Do you now have the school information from schoolwork that you're looking at? The slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I will point to you, down there where it says recommendations in schoolwork. On each school, as receive, do not receive, do you see that?
No, I'm not about.
Yeah, you're on a different one.
Oh, she's on the summary
You're on the
document.
summary document.
Yeah, so look at the summary document.
Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, she's on.
For those of you on the phone, there's a summary document, it's blue, it's shaded blue, it's a grid with all the applicants on it, and then there's additional individual summary documents for each of the applicants that's linked through your agenda.
Oh, yes, Kimberly, I see this, and remember I was at the meeting, earlier today, so I'm aware of this, information. So I'm
I
following
do
you.
recall the earlier. If you all look at that, slide, you will see the recommendations that were given. And what I would like to point out is, if we need to hold to high standards, okay? But if we vote to proceed or not to proceed just one of those that says do not proceed, how was legally not, but for all of them? Or what recourse of action do we have for the others that we decided that did not meet four out of 5? You see that?
I do, Kimberly, this is not a cookie cutter kind of.
I think we need
So
some
was
legal
gonna say.
advice here. Isn't this grade 7 soccer?
Well, hold on.
I mean, it's-
Yes, everybody has everybody's an individual vote.
And one has nothing to do with the other.
No, everybody gets their own individual vote for this one.
nothing to do with the other. From a legal standpoint, we say, if we don't agree with the school works on this one, it doesn't mean we have to disagree with them on all the rest of it.
I think what she's trying to say is that, this decision, like choosing to go forward with one, makes that precedent from this point forward, to be sure that you're treating everybody consistently, is what she's saying. And I will,
Yeah, I think that's. I think that's-
Kimberly, did you hear Bailey's comments?
No, I was hoping to hear them from you.
Okay, I'm gonna let her repeat it, because she was kind of quiet, and she's moved down a little bit from the phone, so I'll let her repeat that comment so you can hear.
I'm sorry, Kimberly, Mr. Billingsley asked about the votes, and then everybody does have their own individual vote for this. But I said that what I thought you were trying to say was that, you wanted to be sure that each application was treated consistently, fairly and consistently with all of the others. And that this kind of sets precedence from this point forward as, to, you know, what the board expects and what you move through and that sort of stuff. Is that, okay?
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm not sure that all this does, the only precedence that this sets is that the board decides on an individual basis, the merits of everybody.
Yes, sir.
And we set that precedent the first time we met.
Yes, sir. Everybody's got their own independent vote. Absolutely. And you can abstain, you can vote, you can.
I have another process question. So if we were to move an applicant that is not being recommended by the third party evaluator, that has the expertise in evaluating applications, and they're going to go to the stage 3, is there something different or more that we're going to require or ask of the particular applicant? That, so for example, the data that was provided, I understand we don't have data from the COVID year for the statewide assessment, but and also this recent past year, the statewide assessment results are not out yet, but I would expect they have benchmark assessment for this current year, and maybe even have some from that COVID year, if they do it 3 times a year. So for context, if they had an opportunity to provide more context, like, so for example, their NWA, reading and math, I guess proficiency levels, I'm not sure what they're called on that test. If they went from 72 and 81 in reading and math down to 27%, that's a huge difference. But if there's something in between there that's positive, that shows, well, this year it was looking really good, or we're rebounding, or like, would they have the opportunity to provide all of that?
Yes,
to
they
show-
had the opportunity at this stage in the
Okay.
performance track record.
And they already had it
They
too.
had that, they had the opportunity in the narrative and
Right.
in the performance track record section, those 7 indicators that were not addressed. So they did have that.
So they had it, do they still have it? If we were to move them
The
on, would
only
they?
time they would have it is if they were to make it to stage 3 and the board decides to move them on to a capacity hearing.
Right.
And then at the capacity hearing, the evaluators probe on those questions and the applicant brings that data, official data to the committee.
So I don't, if there is something positive or more positive data, I don't know why it wouldn't have already been provided, since this is such a big drop. I mean, I know schools and kids are down because of COVID, and it's not, but that's like, and this is not a state assessment, but that's a really big difference. It's not 10, 12, 15% like the statewide state tests were. So I'm not sure what different would be at the next stage, which, because there's an investment on our part for the next stage too. Is there as well? I mean, in terms of what
the cost is?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Each application, individually at stage 3, I think it's about $9,600 per application.
So we want it to pay, I guess, I don't want to sound crass, but we want everyone to be successful. We want the school to be successful.
Absolutely.
We want to make a good investment. We want to.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
Just for reminders, and since you
Yeah.
weren't here, when that contract is always based on the number of reviews. So it goes from, the initial review costs this, the secondary review costs that, the third review costs this. Each dive deeper, it costs a little bit more. And then, so we do a proposal like on a range. If we start with 15 applicants and we end with 4, we should be here, or somewhere close to that amount in terms of the overall cost of the contract, because we never know, right, how many we'll end up with. I don't remember exactly what the cost of the reports are, but I want to say about $2,500. So roughly at stage 3, if you make it that far, it's going to be somewhere around $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 in application.
Is this in the budget? If this school were to go forward, you're okay on the budget?
Yes. Yes.
For those of you who voted to, I guess, not accept the recommendation of the third party, can you say what you would want to see at the next stage if this school were to move on to the next stage? What is it that you want to see that would make you, or what make you think that, I guess, are you ready to say, I want them to go all the way through, or what do you want to see, I guess, is to be convinced or to help convince everybody else that this is like this applicant meets the standard of the law and all of that?
That's a fair question.
Yes.
So basically, I would just, there's 5 thresholds, right? Or am I wrong? How many are there?
There are 7 total, and then if you partner with an educational service provider, I'll try not to use acronyms and ESP, then there are 7. If you don't, there are 6. On the performance track record section, I think that's page 21 of the application.
So I think we're still pretty early on to catch some applicants who may just need a little bit more help, not necessarily from us, maybe a private entity or something like that, where basically they will move to threshold 3. And so when we meet again to vote for a continuation, they will have had to have completed not only threshold 3 requirements, because accountability is still important, and also have, there'll be an added weight. It's like, hey, if you want to be a part of it, if you want to continue forward, there may be a new stipulation that can be, within. So, and it gives them a little bit more time to try to, like, hey, this is our last goal, or I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking of other options other than just kicking them out to next year.
The reason that I made the motion in the committee today to reject the recommendation of Schoolworks, and I did it for a number of reasons. First of all, I really think that of the 3 criteria that they were inadequate on, the first one was kind of a paperwork thing. I think Jennifer asked that question. It's not a difficult one to address. The second one was sort of like a paperwork issue as well, maybe a little bit more
The board composition.
Right. That was, again, I think that is not the kind of thing that you hold the application up for by itself. The third one, where the percentage of improvement drops so far, I believe that COVID and the everything associated with the worldwide pandemic had a lot to do with that. Without COVID, they may still have had a drop in improvement. But I don't think that's sufficient to keep them from going to the next phase. Everybody also, please remember, this is not the end of this process. You asked me a question that I can't get all the way through. I don't know. We have to take that one phase at a time. I think that they should make it through today. I think that it's I think that the state law, as I heard it read a few minutes ago, allows for some qualitative decision making on the board's part. There were some subjective words in there that allow us to, if we think that we think they met the criteria, then we should be able to let it go forward. And that's why I voted the way that I did. And I think that's why we should let Clarksdale go on forward.
So I just have one other question about the data. So if there was no other evidence with the student performance that would show some context, or maybe that there was some more progress this past year, as far that you're okay with they were 72% in reading and 81% in math, and then it declined to 27% in both of those.
What do you
That,
mean?
that changed.
What do you mean by okay?
I guess is that, the other things you characterize as paperwork issues.
Right.
So, which they're not paperwork issues, there's a board, development issue and maybe the one budgeting issue when you address that, I can see the paperwork, that's budgeting. So, I guess, would you want to, so they could rebudget and get that taken care of? Let's say there's a board development plan and you could see that you'd be comfortable with that. If there were no change in this data or no more data to show, oh, it's actually going in the right direction, or it's been a big, rebound this year. If it's really roughly unchanged, I guess, is that something that would be acceptable?
I don't know that we can capture that. And the reason, let the sidebar.
Okay.
I don't know if the board is interested in that, but we do have data from 21. It's not public. It was done through the trial run, the framework report on her, on the applicant's benchmark data. So there is data available. It's not presented in there. I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but to answer your question, is there data? There is.
Did school work time?
No, it was on our framework trial run.
To answer your question though, that's why we're here. I mean, that's why we're having this discussion. We take these issues one board meeting at a time, one committee meeting at a time, one report at a time. I don't think it's fair for me to have to commit, this is always going to be the way I'm going to vote on this every time it comes up. I don't know that it is. I just know that's the way I feel about it today. I think that there's plenty of reasons to let Clarksdale move to this step to stage 3.
Any other questions?
I did have, I guess, one quick question. In the schools that they're currently operating, from an enrollment standpoint, did enrollment go down? Did it go up? Did it remain unchanged? What's the retention for that school? And I guess what I'm saying is, the way I look at it at this point is the fact that they're operating currently, if they're retaining students, if they're, people that are trying to get in school, then you're doing something right. And I don't know that, every time you can, especially at this point in the evaluation process, I think you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt in considering with, COVID and hybrid learning. My kids went through that. It was horrible. I would like to know about their enrollment, if they've experienced a decrease at that time, and what their retention was, if we have that information.
Also, how is their parent satisfaction? How does that look? Do they seem to be okay on parent satisfaction?
Couple of things. One, to answer your question, Mr. Durrett, the last enrollment information I have from this particular applicant is that they have met their enrollment targets. And so I have no reason to believe otherwise, that they have not met their enrollment targets for the current grade levels that they serve. Right now, they have a contract or a charter for a K-6 to operate and serve those children. So have no evidence to suggest, although that should have been addressed in the application in a different way, to talk about the projections for their enrollment for the high school. So, and again, so those are kind of apples and oranges in terms of a question. Mr. Vinnie, your question was more
Parent satisfaction.
parent satisfaction. I am not privy to any survey, and I don't know if it was addressed in the application or not.
I don't think it's addressed in the application, but it seems like they had very high parent satisfaction. I don't quote me on that, but I'm sure that there are surveys that we can access between now and the next time we might have to vote.
And I have a question too that I would like to add on there. So I know, I think it was the last meeting that we had, you showed some things about how some of the charter schools that are currently going were related to other schools in their district. Is that information available of like, did they see a decline in the other districts that are local to them?
Are you talking about that presentation I did during your onboard?
Oh, yeah, there was your.
So that was, that was 2019 data.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
Well,
But
yeah.
good question.
They don't have that for the public school districts, they didn't collect that data.
We do have that data. It was not made public. That data from 2020, 2021 data is, was collected, was analyzed, and done during the performance framework trial run. So we do have that data, but that data was never made public by the Department of Education. So we do have, some district data, level comparisons.
Because it was only, you mean, because they only tested third grade last year? Because we do have test results.
We do.
From last year.
We do. I guess we never, there was no ranking, right? So
Yeah,
they didn't
no
do it.
ranking.
Yeah. Those test results are available.
Right.
Yes, and those are indicated in this report,
Okay.
aren't they? 2021,
See, so
isn't there 21 data?
Yes.
I guess to answer your
On the
question.
map,
So,
in the
We're talking about
AAP?
there's no,
Particular grade.
Yeah, so you can look up the, let's say, proficiency rates in reading and math in the public schools in
Yes,
your
on the
area
media file, you can.
last year in
Oh, that's
2021. But I guess they're only tested grade last year. I'm not sure what grades are up to right now, but they start testing in third grade, so any
Yeah,
grades
that's right.
third and above, there would be data that you could look at. But then that gets into issues of which is the right comparison school. Some schools are making magnet school, and some districts.
Right.
But if you want to get an overall picture, yeah, that's out there.
But going back to your question about surveys, there is, an opportunity for the applicants in the application cycle to talk about community support. And so, yes, it's not necessarily a parent survey, but there is community
well,
support.
we have the advantage in existing schools of being able to look at data like that.
Correct.
That a cold school coming in and open up for the first time. wouldn't they?
Yes, and in the new framework, there is an opportunity for schools to select a school-selected optional indicator to use to help support their success. So another, shout out to multiple measures.
Okay, I do have a question. Under student populations, does that refer to proposed enrollment, 7 through 12? Or does that relate more to demographics? What's missing from their information provided under student populations?
I don't want to get crossed.
I mean, is there any way to come up with a proposed enrollment for their 7 through 12?
Some of it's hopefully in most schools that would be doing this would be planning on getting some of those seventh graders out of their sixth grade.
Right.
And the rest of it, obviously would be doing our lead, do students.
And I'm sure certainly they have some projection
Oh, they do.
of how many they expect.
Okay, in the area of student populations with respect to the threshold quality review, documents that were considered for this part of the review by the evaluators were the proposal narrative, which was the executive summary. Section 1 of the application, which is the educational program design and capacity, where they looked at student populations such as students with disabilities and at-risk students, student recruitment and enrollment, and then student discipline, all of which could have been addressed in the executive summary as well as through section 1 of the application. Section 2 of this particular student population threshold piece were operations plan and capacity, including facilities. And then the attachments would have been the enrollment policy, the discipline policy, and the financial plan workbook. And those are the areas that SchoolWorks would have taken that dive into using the criteria for evaluation of the threshold quality review. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. Just a note here too, so a response is considered inadequate in any of these areas if it is lacking in merit or raises significant concerns about the applicant's understanding of preparation and or commitment to meeting the needs of all special populations, including students with disabilities, excuse me, EL students, and students requiring remediation or gifted and talented students. If the funds allocated to serving those special populations are inadequate or contradicted by the assumptions in other parts of the plan. And then I think Sarah mentioned earlier the other part about the 80% of your demographics need to match the district in which you're located. And so since some of you guys weren't privy to the application committee, Sarah did review the part of this anyway this morning with the committee.
Are there any more questions before I entertain a motion?
Just keep in mind that, when you guys deny these applications, that is public record, and so you have to be able to state clearly reasons for denial. That is carved out specifically in statute.
So did you guys on the phone hear that, what Debbie was saying about articulating that clearly in the minutes when the board takes action?
So any that may be denied, need that
Yes,
justification
Yes.
in minutes.
that's right. It needs to be stated clearly for public record.
Okay.
Is this going to be part of the minutes? The school board report, is it included as part of the minutes? Because it's included as part of our agenda.
It's not in the minutes, it's not
So,
included in the plan.
so if we wanted to reflect what's in this report, we would literally just read off the report, so it gets in, or could we just give it to Jordan, she puts it in the minutes? I mean, how would that work?
Well, so it wouldn't be in the minutes necessarily.
I know you
What-
said the
what-
reason for the denial.
That needs to be in the minutes, yes.
What if that's the reason?
That's, you didn't say it. So that's to get into the
That's my
minutes,
question.
yes, yeah.
We just
But
have to read.
That
If
form is
we
not
agree-
going to be part of the minutes.
No, but
Okay.
if we agreed with the school board
Yes.
recommendation to not let it go forward, then we can use their reasons as our reasons and read it in the minutes.
Yes, sir. Minutes are just what we say.
And I would think you could use, I don't speak out of turn as the executive director and not board member here, but I would think you could use the language such as the applicant failed to meet 4 of the 5 indicators, or something as simple as that in the minutes then. You wouldn't
Well,
have to be,
that'd be
you
one
wouldn't-
reason.
yeah.
All of it.
you wouldn't have to be as specific.
And in this case, the threshold criteria was met 3 of the 6.
That's correct.
Okay, so, yes, is that you, Don?
Now, before we move on to budget, can somebody give us just a brief of where this goes from here? We're talking about a chance to make this thing, and I'm just not honestly familiar with the process from this point forward. Can somebody run that through for you?
Sure. So once the board takes action today, then wherever the decisions land, the application review team that's hired by SchoolWorks, the independent evaluators, will take each one of the applications in full and push them against the stage 3 criteria and evaluate them at that deeper level. And then they will come back with a similar recommendation. The application committee will again get a report, just like we have done in the past, and have an opportunity to make a decision then on whether or not to accept the recommendations from SchoolWorks or to deny those recommendations. Schools, in this case, this time, there will be an invitation to participate in the capacity hearing, where in the past, an automatic, if you just automatically went to the 3rd phase, you automatically got a capacity hearing. And we built that in last year under Max's recommendations to have an additional decision point so that we did not allow applicants that were not to move forward to stage 3 and in a capacity hearing. Those are additional costs added to the contract as well. So, does that help, Don?
Yeah, I mean, we have essentially one last chance after this. Am I accurate there?
Actually, there are there's two phases really. So the independent evaluation team will review the full application against the published criteria for stage 3. And then after they come back, they will make a recommendation for those applicants or applications who are deemed eligible based on their presentation and their in the full application to be able to move forward to a capacity hearing. Once they get to the capacity hearing, then they'll have another recommendation, and at that time, the applicant will have an opportunity to present a 3-page response based on the feedback from the evaluator. So we are a ways away from a final decision. There are several other steps in the process that need to be completed before the board will take final action on the applicants for this cycle. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. One thing I would point out to the board members as well, and on the website, and I don't know if it's in your packet or not, but there are milestones that were published, and they specifically indicate when each phase is, when the decision points are, and then when the board has to make its final decision. So everything from the release, the RFP release, through the letter of intent to the application when it was due back in May, and then each phase from there on. So that's available, and if anybody needs it, I'm happy to send you that milestones.
Okay. All right. Any last questions before we move on to entertain motion?
Okay, so the capacity building hearing, is that closed? Are board members able to attend that?
Board members do not come. That's a good question, but Mr. Billingsley asked that before today.
But the last year, the hearings were recorded, and board members could,
Oh, okay.
after the fact, come in and listen to the recording. And I did.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so you can do that.
Good question.
That's a good question.
It is.
To add to that, we asked for some things to be provided at that hearing. Is there something that we're interested in that we want to see, like more data, for example?
It's not in the RFP to do that, but
Okay.
I feel like if there's something that the board would want, specifically from an applicant, I'm looking at Bailey now for guidance, but I would feel like the evaluators could probe on something if there are specific areas in the application. Or do we want to be completely independent?
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, consistency. And so if it's not already in the RFP, or the application.
Yeah, I know you guys want to be involved and really involved at a high level as well as a granular level. But we do have to be careful and be reminded that you are the oversight and accountability entity and not the technical assistance provider or the independent evaluator. And so I know and I appreciate you wanting to be involved like that. But I do think that's important. And I also think it's important to point out what I pointed out during the application committee this morning, and that is, let me see, I think it's on page 10. Yes, there is an applicant code of conduct in each one of the RFPs, and for those of you who have heard this before, forgive me, but I'm going to read this one more time so the other board members are aware. But members of the board are obligated to make their decisions in the best interest of children, free from personal or political influence. Similarly, charter school applicants have the responsibility of respecting and upholding the integrity of the entire charter school proposal and process. Specifically, charter school applicants shall not initiate or attempt to initiate any activity with an MCSAB board member, with the exception of a public hearing, which is different from the capacity hearing or interview. Initiate or attempt to initiate any activity with a member of the independent evaluation team, meaning schoolworks in this case, or direct any communication, including proposal documentation or documents, to a board member or to a member of the evaluation team. Any charter school applicant who is found to be in violation of these requirements may be deemed ineligible for consideration in future proposal processes. So, I do think that's important to point out as well, since we're talking about what we were talking about there in particular about how the board needs to be engaged and where they shouldn't be engaged. So,
I have one last question.
Okay.
All right. So, has the board ever moved, applicant through that wasn't that the evaluated, not recommend that we remove?
Yes, a great question. That's a really good question, and the answer is yes. The board in I want to say 2017, and forgive me if, it was before I got here, yes. NACSA had done the independent evaluations at that time, and they recommended that 2 schools were denied. Those were current operators in our current portfolio. They recommended that they were denied because they did not have a significant statistically sound operational evidence that they were, doing right by boys and girls in terms of their student outcomes. So that was the rationale for them, what SchoolWorks indicated and is in the statute. The board came back, I think, the following month after discussion and did move those 2 schools forward. One of those schools from 2017 is slated to open this year. So they had delayed operations delayed request over and over, and one has yet to open. So the board did take action. The board did go ahead and approve the recommendation from NACSA, which was to deny. They went ahead and approved. One of those schools will open this fall, and one of those schools is yet to open.
Okay, so that was in the final stage, I guess.
That was at the final stage.
We're not being recommended to move forward.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Yes, that was the final stage.
And so they're both pending still, or in the works?
One is scheduled to open this
Okay.
fall, and one has not ready to open.
Okay.
Continue to request a delayed opening since 2017.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions? Yeah, good discussion. Great. Okay, so at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve stage 2 threshold quality review findings and move Clarksdale Collegiate Prep through to stage 3 of the cycle.
So I'm going to Bill Billingsley.
Second, Kenneth Roberts.
Any discussion? Okay, so I have a question actually. So the way these are all worded is that the motions are all to move them to the next stage. Okay, is that-
You just.
Oh, I see, deny that. Oh, I'm sorry.
You asked for the motion, but I gave it to you anyway.
I got it. That was the motion from this morning from the.
Right. The
that was
motion from
the-
this morning was actually to deny the recommendation.
I got it. So here's the positive.
The motion here is to approve them all.
To approve them.
You-
Okay, got it.
Same thing, you just worded it.
Yeah, your motions are coming from the committee this morning.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I was thinking. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? None. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'm on the phone. Lee Jarrett.
Aye.
Okay, Don Hinton.
I will vote aye very greatly.
Okay. Kimberly, Remax?
Nay. This is Kimberly. No.
Okay. And any opposed? in the room?
Because of my concern that we are setting a dangerous precedent. I vote no.
So, the ayes have it. So, we might have to, right? I haven't voted, so I vote to. Okay. And I also vote to oppose. The motion,
So I have 4, is what I got, is that what you got?
A nay for Cook, a nay for Whittier, a nay for Remack, an aye for Lee Jarrett, an aye for Don Hinton, and then the motion about Billingsley, second by Candace.
Yeah.
so that motion.
Or by a motion
Carries. Okay. is Level Up Academy Public Charter. Are there, Kimberly?
The applications committee voted to deny Level Up Academy Public Charter School the opportunity to proceed to stage 3 of the cycle.
Okay, are there any questions about Level Up Academy and the recommendation?
Looking for a reason for denial if you guys decided to go with it.
Oh, okay, this one, okay, got it. All right. Any questions on this one? Okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the stage 2 threshold quality review findings to deny Level Up Academy Public Charter for the opportunity to move through stage 3 of the cycle.
So moved. Bill Billingsley.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Lee Durham.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I believe that we should that we should deny this school moving forward because they did not meet 4 of the 5 threshold criteria. One for charter school obligations, 1 for student populations, 1 for startup plan, and 1 for personnel.
Okay. Take a vote now. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is Kimberly.
Okay. And Lee Durrett?
Aye.
Okay. Don Hinton?
Just confirm an aye is to deny, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I vote aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Oh, there's more. Jennifer Nyberg, okay. All right, the motion carries. All right, next up. Oh, sorry, I thought, yeah, okay. Okay.
You are welcome to do whatever you want to do. So for you, the same as for
Yeah. Well, is it, can you just give maybe background on what an abstention means? Like, my understanding is you don't have enough information.
If you're going to abstain. Okay, so that makes, so you.
We just voted on Level Up.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
And now we're gonna go to Mount Bayou.
Okay, so you abstain
From Level Up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You're abstaining from non-binding or you're abstaining from level up?
Level up, okay, okay, that's what I was trying to clarify.
I think that's it for the record, the motion carries, right? Okay, yeah, that's it.
That's what puts it at 6. They're voting.
Okay, all right. So now we're moving on to Mount Bayou. Right? Ready?
That's
All right, Kimberly, you're on.
Yes.
Okay.
The applications committee voted to deny Mount Bayou New Millennial High School the opportunity to proceed to stage 3 of the cycle.
Any questions on this one? Mount Bayou? Okay, then at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve stage 2 threshold quality review findings and deny Mount Bayou New Millennial High School the opportunity to move through to stage 2 of the cycle. Stage 3 of the cycle.
So moved. Bill Billingsley.
Okay. Second?
Second, Lee Durham.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm sorry, let
Back to
me read
discussion.
this.
Okay.
I recommend that we accept their schoolwork's recommendation because Mountain Bayou did not meet 4 of the 5 threshold criteria: student populations, startup plan, personnel, and financial plan.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And identify yourself, please, Kimberly.
Aye.
Okay, that's Kimberly Remack. Okay, Don Hinton.
Aye.
Okay, Lee.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, so that motion carries. Now we're moving on to Natchez Adams Early Childhood and Intermediate Center.
The application to voted to deny Adams Early Childhood and Speech Center the opportunity to pursue a other site.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions about that? Hearing none at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the stage 2 threshold quality review findings and deny Natchez Adams Early Childhood and Intermediate Center the opportunity to move through to stage 3 of the cycle.
Bill Bellingley, so moved.
Second,
Leader, second.
any discussion? Mr. Billingsley, do you want to give the reason?
Yes, the reason I made that motion was because Natchez Adams Early Childhood and Intermediate Center failed to meet the criteria in 4 of the 5 categories: student populations, startup plan, personnel, and financial plan.
Okay. All those in favor? Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton,
Aye.
Kimberly Remak,
Candace Robinson abstained.
okay. You're another B, Kimberly, too.
Oh, I sent her a text.
Okay.
That she may have.
Is that you, Kimberly?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost my connection.
Okay, so and your vote on Natchez Adams? The motion?
That was, I voted to deny.
Okay, all right, and any opposed? That motion carries. And now we're up to Southwest Mississippi Academy of Health Sciences.
Okay, the applications committee voted to deny Southwest Mississippi Academy of Health Sciences the opportunity to proceed to stage 3 of the cycle.
Okay, any questions? All right, hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the stage 2 threshold quality review findings and deny Southwest Mississippi Academy of Health Sciences the opportunity to move through to stage 3 of the cycle.
Bill Bellingley, so moved.
Can I get a second?
Leader, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Billingsley, you want to give the reason?
Yes, the reason that I recommended Southwest Mississippi Academy of Health Sciences to not move forward was they did not meet 4 out of the 5 threshold criteria: student populations, startup plan, personnel, and financial plan.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton,
Aye.
Kimberly Remak,
Aye.
any opposed? The motion carries. And our final one is South Mississippi Conservatory for Performing and Media Arts.
Yeah, the applications committee voted to deny Southwest Mississippi Conservatory for Performing and Media Arts the opportunity to proceed to stage 3 of the cycle.
Okay, are there any questions? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the stage 2 threshold quality review findings and deny Southwest Mississippi Conservatory for Performing and Media Arts the opportunity to move through to stage 3 of the cycle.
So moved, Bill Bellingley.
Thank you. Get a second?
Leader, second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I recommend that this school, Southwest Mississippi Conservatory for the Performing Arts, not move forward because they failed to meet 4 out of 5 threshold criteria: student populations, startup plan, personnel, and financial plan.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Right, Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton,
Aye.
Kimberly Remak.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay.
Jim, you know the thing?
Did you abstain on the last
Yeah.
one?
You got it.
Okay.
Did you say?
Yeah,
You did.
Covered this.
Yes.
Anyone abstain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And abstain. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so moving on to item B, action item, to consider approval of the professional college contract amendment. Dr. Kay will present.
Thank you. Okay, in your packet, you have a copy of an amendment to, extend the current contract we have with Professional Polish. You have the, information in there as to what their scope of work will be, and an amount of the total contract should not exceed $60,000. This will be paid with CSP funds, and Professional Polish will be responsible for those things indicated on page 2 of the contract. This is, by the way, a contract also approved by council prior to putting forward the contract.
How many people can take advantage of this training? The same contract, I just missed it.
This is an extension to a contract that we've had. Right. Yeah, okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, hearing none at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the professional college contract amendment.
Bill, this will move.
Make a second.
Jennifer, will you second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? And Kimberly Remak, Don Hinton. Go ahead. Don, what was your vote? Okay, thank you. Lee Durrett?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right, the next action item is to consider approval of the Schumacher Consulting contract. Dr. Kay will present.
Yes, this contract is for a scope of work, a limited scope of work to work with staff on charter school finance. You have the contract before you with the details on the scope of work in your packet. Not to exceed $1,500.
Okay. Any questions on that?
These are your favorites.
Sure. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Schumacher Consulting contract.
Bill, Bill, this will move.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Jennifer, will you second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Now for the roll call, Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton,
Aye.
Kimberly Remak.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right, action item D is to consider approval to begin the Administrative Procedures Act process to revise Board Policy Title 10, Part 404, Chapter 1, Performance Framework. Dr. Kay will present.
First of all, I am happy to say that the performance framework trial run is ended. It was a learning experience, I think, for everybody involved, the schools and us included, since there was a lot of new information to digest. But like I said I think even months prior, I think everything went really, really well. We got great feedback from the schools, and we took into consideration that feedback. From that feedback, you have several recommendations that the Performance and Accountability Committee heard back on June 28th when they met and agreed that those recommendations should go forward. One is with respect to the dissemination of the information to ensure that we retain fidelity and confidentiality to the model that we have and that we've worked with so diligently to make sure that we have some business rules in place to ensure that those do keep their integrity. And those are before you on page 1 of that document that's in your packet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to go through them, read them individually if you like, or you can read them on your own. So whatever you're comfortable with. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer that.
Since this is taking place during the school years for these schools, is 7 days reasonable? Do we need to allow them more time than 7 days?
Here's the biggest challenge with the 7 days. We do not get, and Jean can attest to this, we do not get accountability results, final results until very late, sometimes August. It has been known to be later depending on the situation. The statutory requirement for us to turn around that report to the schools and to you for approval is September the 30th. And so we don't have much wiggle room. And so once we start getting in official data from MDE, we need to start putting that in. And as soon as we have that, they will get the academic framework and they will get the organizational framework. And so they'll have that data and they'll be able to, look at the data and see, are there any errors in here? And if so, we can address those at that time. The financial framework will not come to them until after, because we do not, although it's due October the 1st by statute, which is beyond that September 30 deadline. And so we always do a supplemental report for the financial. So they'll have a little more time on that report. They won't have 2 out of 3 before that. So.
Okay, if there are corrections or errors or otherwise,
Sure.
we need to spend more time. And how flexible is that September 30th?
It's not flexible, and the reason it's not is because it's in statute.
Oh, I understand that,
Yeah.
but the, if we're going to only allow them 7 days to respond to us
Sure.
with factual errors, then that means if they respond to us and there are factual errors, then that doesn't change our time frame.
No.
We just have to fix it by that September 30th
That's right.
time.
The one thing I will say, the schools already have access to their data, to their academic data. They've already been provided with, I'm looking at Jane for confirmation on that, but the schools they already have access to their data. And they know, and they can start, if they'd like, they can start playing with that data and looking at it, adding their proficient and advanced scores together by grade level, by subject area, and getting a good idea of where they will be. Have those numbers already prepared ahead of time, and then when we give them their report, they ought to be in a pretty good position to start verifying the data that we provide to them. So we don't have access to that data yet, but the schools do. So it's embargoed data.
I just know they're awfully busy the first.
Absolutely.
7 business days.
Yeah.
Is a quick
I
turnaround.
totally understand, yeah.
And I don't know exactly when they get their assessment files, or if they've already gotten them.
They have their
They have them,
assessment
okay,
files.
so
Yes,
they
they
have
have.
them before the public
Correct.
report.
The other piece of that, Mr. B, is a lot of and we did this intentionally, so with the organizational framework, a lot of that is based off of their statement of assurance, which we've already received some of that, and so it relieves them of a lot of administrative burden, so they don't have to capture a lot of data on that. Most of that is compliance. So that helps with a little bit. Tight timelines are tough. Not only is this due, our annual report is due to the legislature on September 30th. So we have a heavy lift from between now and September. So that's that on the dissemination, and hopefully that answers your question. Then academic performance framework, internal guidance. One of the things that came up over and over again in our conversations with the middle schools in particular, because we had comparable data, the middle schools in Jackson, there are some magnet schools and some IB schools. And so in all fairness to the schools, pulling those out of the framework and allowing the guidance to allow for that for a more apple-to-apple comparison to the schools felt like the right thing to do. It was not in the guidance, and so it would be my recommendation and was my recommendation to the committee to allow for us to pull those schools out and not use them as we determine their geographic district of comparison, so that it's more fair in terms of review. Then for the final area was around gap data. Gap data, for those of you that are not familiar with what the state does and what the federal government requires, and our state law requires that we do an analysis of our subgroup data and look at the gaps between performance of girls to guys and African Americans to whites and EL kids and special ed kids, and there's a way to look at that gap data. The gap data, in my opinion, is much more important at a school level than it is for the board in high stakes decision making, because it can inform their instruction. They can know, oh wow, I've got a real serious gap between my 5th grade kiddos and who I'm serving with special needs versus those kids who are not special needs. in English language arts. And so this is a way that I can address it at a curriculum level or a grade level or even down to a teacher level. So it's informational for them. The other piece that's challenging with our schools in particular, we don't have a lot of, we're pretty homogenous. You know, we don't have a lot of diversity in our groups either. So you don't always have an end count of 10 or more to compare. And in the old framework, there was a comparison to the local school district, which really we really weren't doing what we needed to do. And I think until we got into the framework, got into the data, looked at the release from MDE, we really weren't sure how that was going to impact our schools. So again, this feels like the right thing to do. Statutorily, we are obligated to report it, but we are not obligated to compare it. And so I would make the recommendation that we would just report that so that we meet the standards or the expectations from the statute, and then leave that as a report only. We would also pull out the weight of that indicator, which I think was 5%. And so then every school will have that weight removed from their findings.
Any questions, Beth? No?
Is this, what we're voting on today is just to put it into the review process?
Yeah, correct. Yes. Okay. So I'll make that motion. So clear. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve beginning the APA process to revise board policy Title 10, Part 404, Chapter 1, Performance Framework.
Bill Billingsley, so moved.
Second.
Chairman, I move your second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And on the phone, Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton, Kimberly Reedmack.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, moving on, there's an informational item about the FY 2023 offices.
It requires no action. It's just our lease. Doesn't cost us anything to operate here, which is a good thing.
All right.
So no questions for Denise on that one. All right.
All right. So moving on to action item, consider approval to schedule a special call meeting on August 3rd, 2022 at 1 p.m. via teleconference means.
Simply would ask the board to consider a special call meeting, teleconference only, to consider an award for the RFP for the annual report. You'll remember you approved a release for that, and that is coming due toward the end of the month, and we'll need to take action on that. The board doesn't meet in August, and so before then we need to get working on that annual report since it's due. Go ahead.
This time, I'll entertain a motion to schedule a special call meeting on August 3rd, 2022 at 1 p.m. via teleconference.
So moved, Bill Billingsley.
Can I get a second?
Second. Chairman, I move your.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, so is there room to change the date? I mean, I have another obligation, so if not, I mean, I don't want to schedule the meeting, but I mean, I won't be able to make it.
We really need to do it earlier than
And that's
that.
fine. I mean, because it's a Wednesday, Monday works for me.
And it's a call in.
Okay.
So it will take,
Last
yeah, it will last.
I may be able to.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, yes, that's right.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, discussion. Oh, yes, okay. Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and Lee Durrett,
Aye.
Don Hinton? Don, you hear that? What's your vote, Don? Aye, thank you. Kimberly Reedmack?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, other business, next meeting. The next meeting will be on August 3rd at 1 p.m. via teleconference means. This will be a special call meeting. The next regularly scheduled meeting is scheduled for September 12th at 2022 at 1 p.m. at 239 North Lamar Street, Suite 207, Jackson, Mississippi 39201. Actually, I get a conference that day, but we'll figure that out. Okay, and next order of business is adjournment. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So the Chairman, here.
Second.
Second. Bill Billingsley.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Do I need a roll call on that one?
I know these are tough, high-stakes decisions that we have to make, and I appreciate all of your input and your questions. They're thoughtful, and I appreciate everything and all the comments and just the high level of participation that you guys and the commitment that you've made to the board. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Okay, we stand adjourned at 2:40.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.